Defense ministers from NATO member states will meet in Brussels tomorrow to discuss Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So with us now is the U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Ambassador Julianne Smith. She joins us from Brussels with a preview of that meeting. And Madam Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. First, let's start off with kind of the purpose of this meeting, the messaging that you hope is sent out to the rest of the world, and then constructively, what sort of assistance will be discussed for Ukraine?
Well, this is an important opportunity for the allies, all 30 members of the alliance, to come together here in Brussels tomorrow to send a united message, one of resolve, that we will continue to do everything we can to apply pressure on Russia to get them to stop this senseless war. We will also come together and think about and develop more ways to help Ukraine. Almost all NATO allies are providing lethal or humanitarian support. And lastly, we'll also talk about what we can do for the NATO allies that are on the eastern flank of this alliance, countries that are such as Poland or the Baltic states, countries like Romania, Slovakia, Hungary. What are their security needs right now? And how can NATO allies come together to provide them with the troops that they need for their security as well? So this is a very important meeting. The Secretary will be landing tonight in Brussels, and I think it's a strong indication of the Biden administration's continued dedication both to ending this war in Ukraine and to standing united with our allies.
Madam Ambassador, there were some pretty hair-raising moments in the last couple of days where Russian mortar fire, Russian missiles came dangerously close to the border with Poland, just some 15 miles from the border with Poland, of course, Poland being a NATO country. What kind of discussions are being had should either through trial and error or deliberately the Russians hit a NATO member, either indiscriminately or by design?
Well, you're right. We did see this recent attack in Western Ukraine. I mean, we've expected the Russians all along really to instigate attacks all across the country. We don't want them to continue with this violence, and we will continue to urge Russia to stop the violence. But in terms of your specific question about NATO territory, the one thing that is very clear, you've heard President Biden talk about this, is that we are all committed and all united around what we call Article 5 of the NATO treaty that says an attack on one is an attack on all. And there's no doubt in my mind at this moment that should something happen on NATO territory, this alliance will stand united and will come to the aid of that particular country. We have not reached the point where any ally has invoked Article 5 yet, but again, I know that the alliance is ready for every contingency.
You know, I think the whole world has been incredibly impressed with the ability of the Ukrainian military to keep the Russian military at bay so far. Yeah. But you got to wonder just how much longer can they handle this onslaught? What's your assessment of the Ukraine's military and whether or not they're able to hang on much longer?
Well, you're absolutely right. The Ukrainian military has just shown a superb capability and ability to push back on Russian aggression and this fighting. Their spirit, the capabilities that they bring to bear, their determination to win this fight and not allow the Russians to achieve their objectives is nothing short of remarkable. We're all trying to see what more we can provide them with. The focus right now is on air defense. Again, most members of the alliance are providing lethal assistance, but what we will do tomorrow is look at additional ways that we can continue providing that type of assistance. But you're absolutely right. Their ability to push back, what they've achieved to date is really something to behold.
Madam Ambassador, earlier I had a conversation with Samantha Power, who's now head of USAID, but of course was a former ambassador to the United Nations. And we talked about the refugee crisis and what aid groups are able to do to bring humanitarian assistance to refugees that are streaming across the border from Ukraine into Poland. But what about the people, those are the lucky ones, as horrific and as harrowing as those images are of refugees streaming to other countries, those folks that are trapped behind enemy lines in some countries where the Russians have cut off food, and water and any kind of aid. Is there anything that NATO can do to facilitate humanitarian assistance to people who are not able to get to a NATO member country?
Well, every member of this alliance is providing humanitarian support right now. And I can tell you that the feeling here at NATO headquarters, but also downtown in the European Union and in various national capitals across Europe, is that we all must do everything we can to ensure that support is making its way into Ukraine. Right now, we have been able to work closely with Ukrainian partners that have the ability to transport that aid directly into Ukraine, into those hotspots. But what we really need to do is push and pressure Moscow to actually execute humanitarian corridors. That's really what this moment calls for. Unfortunately, Russia talks a big game in this regard, but they've done nothing to ensure that humanitarian relief can actually get into the country or that people that are looking to leave can get out. So we will continue to apply that pressure on Moscow, calling for them to allow this support to come in. But I know Samantha Power was here in Brussels just a couple weeks ago, and I know she and her team, as well as many others across the administration, are very focused on that exact question.
Ambassador Julianne Smith, thank you, ma'am, for being with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.